Imagine a sprawling, meticulously engineered steel machine. Every gear is perfectly milled, every lever precisely calibrated for maximum efficiency. But it sits completely frozen. It has no fuel. This is the exact state of most corporate strategies and business plans. You can diagram a flawless go-to-market architecture, but without a specific external force to drive it, that plan is functionally dead. In his 1937 text, Ink and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill dedicates Chapter 10 to isolating this exact force. We are stripping away the 1930s self-help aura that often surrounds this book. Instead, we are going to examine Hill's concept as a strict, almost mathematical model for organizational alignment. Hill identifies a central paradox of ambition. Plans cannot execute themselves. They are inert documents that require a highly specific fuel. He calls this fuel power. To be clear, Hill's definition of power has nothing to do with political authority, executive mandates, or brute force. Recognizing the difference between a static plan and the power required to run it separates the strategist whose ideas never leave the whiteboard from the builder who actually scales a vision into reality. Hill provides a rigid definition for this mechanism. Power is strictly organized and intelligently directed knowledge. Raw intelligence, accumulated facts, and isolated expertise contain zero kinetic energy on their own. They must undergo a structural transformation. First, this abstract information must be highly organized into a coherent, functioning system. Second, that organized system must be intelligently directed toward a definite, singular objective. Hill uses the industrialist Andrew Carnegie as his primary historical case study for this systemic organization. Carnegie himself did not possess the deep technical knowledge of steel manufacturing or chemical metallurgy. Instead of attempting to learn the engineering, Carnegie achieved massive output by acquiring and directing the specialized knowledge of engineers, chemists, and plant managers. Actionable power is a state achieved only when abstract information is aggressively filtered, tightly structured, and pointed directly at an unyielding objective. This creates a logistical problem. If executing massive plans requires vast amounts of specialized, organized knowledge, how does a single individual acquire enough of it to fuel the machine? They don't. Hill's solution to the strict limits of individual human capacity is the mastermind protocol. Structurally, the mastermind is defined as the strict coordination of effort between two or more people. To function, this network relies on two non-negotiable rules. First, the entire group must be completely aligned toward a single definite end. Second, they must operate in a spirit of perfect harmony. This requires stripping away ego, internal politics, and internal competition. When perfect harmony is achieved, the resulting cognitive output is not additive. 1 + 1 does not equal 2. It creates an exponential multiplier effect, generating a massive, unseen third mind. We can ground this abstract theory by looking at Thomas Edison. Edison holds over 1,000 patents, but his true genius was organizational. He successfully harmonized dozens of specialized researchers, machinists, and physicists at his Menlo Park lab into a singular, functioning mastermind. He and his contemporary, Henry Ford, actively networked their minds together, sharing research and strategic insight to deliberately multiply their individual capacities. The math is straightforward. Individual intelligence is structurally insufficient for massive capital accumulation. A harmonized human network is an operational mandate. Building the network is only half the equation. Keeping it from collapsing requires an understanding of emotional energy. To explain this, Hill maps out a bimodal analogy of human cognition, which he calls the stream of life. He views the thinking process as a directional fluid dynamic. In this model, cognition is never neutral. It is always pulling you one way or the other. Positive emotions, like intense desire and calculated faith, act as physical vectors that lock you into the current of accumulation and propel you forward. Conversely, negative emotions, like fear, doubt, and indecision, act as entropic vectors. They violently drag the system down into the current of poverty and failure. Grave. This is why a mastermind network is incredibly fragile. A single node introducing negative friction, whether through bruised ego or unchecked doubt, instantly breaks the harmony and kills the power output. Hill issues a stern warning here. Passively understanding this stream does absolutely nothing. It requires aggressive, active mental application to physically switch from the current of entropy to the current of fortune. In Hill's model, the emotional state of the group acts as a physical determinant, dictating the directional momentum of their collective effort. Capital is highly elusive. It will not simply arrive because a plan is well drawn. It must be aggressively and systematically secured. Securing it is a matter of strictly executing the variables we have just deconstructed. This process forms final structural equation. Individual desire compels the formation of a mastermind network. That perfectly harmonized network generates power. The power generated is applied to the organized plan, providing sustained pressure to convert an abstract idea into capital. This brings us back to the opening paradox. A strategy without this specific sequence of power generation is nothing more than a dead document. Wealth accumulation is an engineered organizational outcome. It is practically never a solo intellectual pursuit. To achieve a massive, capital-intensive objective, you cannot rely on the refinement of the plan alone. You must build the harmonized network